Up and running. And that's right there. Good, good. Yeah, poofy as shit. Can't be helped today. All right. Now, let's proceed. Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the Storyteller's Corner. Break time, story time number 13. I'm your host, Joshua T. Calkins Trubergy, also known as Byron Sidious. And I am in a bit of a middle ground conundrum. I'm not certain what story to present to you this break time story time. If I should proceed, go back to and continue on with the presentation of a Midwestern Yankee in King Owen's Court, or if I should finally do a live reading presentation, a horror story, since we are in the spooky season of October. I had asked a couple of episodes ago if the viewers of this program or of this channel might offer their own feedback. And, well, let's be honest, I'm a small channel. I don't get a great deal of traction or viewership. So it has not been any kind, there has not been any feedback. May as well just be honest about that. I don't do gangbuster numbers because I'm a fairly niche kind of guy. I do a relatively smallish thing when it comes to presentations and commentators on Rumble or YouTube. Now, I did upload to both my Rumble and my YouTube earlier this morning an essay piece, kind of a diatribe that I had originally written up to be posted on my Substack, which I did ultimately end up posting it to my Substack. So it's there in written form. It's on the Rumble channel in audio presentation with just a still image of myself from years ago, and also on my YouTube channel, same video, just a still image that I layer audio recording over top of. I had done that last night after I got the little ones to bed because I wasn't at work yesterday. I called in because my wife suffered a high ankle sprain at like near the end of her shift at work, so I had to take her to urgent care to be seen to. Uh, in the boot, she's got anti-inflammatories. She's doing better. Um, so thankfully, that is not a grievous injury, but she is going to be kind of hobbled for a couple of weeks in terms of moving around. Her mobility is limited as a result of that injury. So I am inclined, since it is the spooky season, to do a presentation reading of an Amelia City horror story. Now, most of my stories have been typed up, written up, saved in a document file somewhere on a zip drive or a SanDisk micro SD card or on the hard drive of my laptop, or I will have them typed up and saved in one of a couple of different cloud servers that I make use of. But this is a different kind of situation. This story has only been handwritten. I have not typed it up. I'm not sure why I haven't typed it up, but I wrote this a few months ago. And I just have never actually sat down to type it out. And I hand wrote it twice. Once as just a preliminary draft, dry run through. I wrote about 3/4 of the story, decided there were a few adjustments and changes I wanted to make, and then went grabbed this and just hand wrote it. It's the only thing in this notebook. So I'm going to present an Amelia City story by yours truly, entitled "Peers," being rather a subjective term. Felipe leaned back in the creaking swivel chair, feet propped on the edge of the table situated at the front of the rear room. The whole place had once been a mid-sized auto body shop, but like many mom-and-pop businesses across the American Midwest, it had gone under during the COVID-19 pandemic. The office stood slightly elevated over the lift floor ahead, separated by a wall-length stretch of window, so the prior owner had been able to watch his men at work. The same concept applied now, just with a different business and product. Before, Tom Bennett had fixed up cars. Now, Felipe distributed and sold fentanyl and cocaine to the willing customers in and around Amelia City. He had moved operations here from Chicago the year before and had found himself faced with an almost strange thing, for there was no competition for his wares. How a metro of this size hadn't already been claimed by some larger organization, he neither knew nor cared. All that mattered to him was that there was an eager clientele to service in and around Amelia City, Iowa. "Yo, Felipe," one of his lieutenants said as he came in from the product floor, reaching out and tapping knuckles with the boss. "What's good?" "All's good, Marco. All's good. See the new kicks?" he asked, wiggling his feet. Marco had a seat next to him and turned his attention to the row of small video monitors on the table, each one tied to a camera around the shop's exterior perimeter. Two of the security feeds were set a little farther out, near the head of the shop's access road. The garage sat off of a main road, but not many folks came down this way anymore. The diner, gas station, and gun shop that had shared the little out-of-the-way locale with the garage had all suffered the same fate as Bennett's body shop, and as such, most locals on the city's western outskirts just ignored the area altogether. Marco looked over briefly at the shoes. "Them's nice. When'd you get them?" "Yesterday, on my way home." "Yo, speaking of," said Felipe more quietly, pulling his feet down and leaning toward his trusted lieutenant, "I think a few of us gotta move out of that building. I've been seeing some tags for some of the crew popping up in a few places." "Oh, for real?" Marco turned his attention back to the monitors, squinting at them. "What's the tag look like?" "It's like, I don't know, some kind of claws or something." Marco's head whipped away from the monitors to meet Felipe's eyes, his countenance turning swiftly ashen. "What?" Felipe asked with a shrug. "When you see them, you see that tag?" the lieutenant asked in a half-terrified rasp. "A few days ago, man, but chill, Marco," Felipe said with an awkward smile. "You know that crew or something?" "You got a comment?" "Hey, Brother Cortex, how you doing, brother? Good to see you in here." Marco sprang up from his seat, pacing immediately with his hands on his hips, muttering to himself. "Hey, man, you're my best local talent here, bro. If this is some deep shit that we're in, I gotta know." Marco ceased pacing, giving Felipe a firm glare. "That tag ever show up on the door to your place? Or on the wall across from your place?" "No, but it did show up on Tulio's door," Felipe observed. "He told me about it yesterday, took a picture to show me on his phone." "Where is he today?" Marco asked. Felipe looked out the window wall at the guys divvying up product below, and realized that Tulio, who usually kept a fairly close eye down on the floor, was not present. Felipe began. "Fuck!" Marco spat, stomping his foot. "He's probably fucking dead, man. That's how shit goes down around here, Felipe. You get tagged with the claw, you either disappear or you get found in a really fucked up state of being, man." "Seriously?" Felipe took out his phone and dialed up Tulio. The phone rang several times before a preset voicemail prompt turned on, and he hung up. 2 more times he tried calling, hanging up each time when the prompt came on. "What the fuck?" "We gotta go over there," Marco said with a heavy sigh. Felipe hit the redial one more time, and on the second ring, the line opened up, and Felipe held up a finger to stay his lieutenant, putting the phone on speaker. Tulio? It's Felipe, man. Where you at? The dealer asked angrily. He held the phone up, and he and Marco heard what sounded like movement and clattering coming through the line. Tulio? Dreadfully sorry about that, said an unfamiliar voice on the other end of the line, underscored by someone else on that end muttering and grunting. Felipe knew the quality of that sound. It was someone trying to talk or shout around a gag in their mouth. Your man Tulio is a bit tied up at the moment. More clattering, chair legs thumping on a floor. Yo, you don't know who you're messing with here, Holmes, Felipe snarled, despite Marco shaking his head vehemently and gesturing at him to just end the call. You calling down the wrath of God, you messing with me and mine. Mr. Alvarez, the man on the other end said coldly, a hint of some kind of accent bleeding through. Felipe's eyes shot wide at the use of his surname. You involve or invoke a god you dare not pray to, given what he would think of how you treat your fellow man. There came a sharp, wet sound, accompanied by muffled howling from Tulio. If you want to see true wrath, Amelia's wrath, you should swing on by when I'm finished here with your left-hand man. It will be educational for you. The line went dead, leaving Felipe and Marco staring at each other. We gotta get over there, Felipe said, reaching for the pistol on the table and jamming it in his waistband. Grab some of them guys and get in the truck and let's go, he snapped, pointing toward their people packaging product. Scene break. That's not actually written down. Madre de Dios, one of their foot soldiers rasped as Felipe and Marco pressed into the apartment kitchen from behind them. The four lackeys shuffled to either side to grant their bosses passage, and the sight of Tulio certainly matched the smell clinging to every molecule of the air in his residence, a blend of spent ozone, burned hair, and rancid meat. Tulio appeared to have been bound to one of his kitchen chairs with sharpened chains, while dressed only in his tidy whities. His face had been peeled off and thrown in bloody gobbets on the small kitchen table. This alone would not have killed him, though. No, that came from the spike-like power adapter for his kitchen grill, being rammed down into the top of his skull, while plugged into an extension cord, which still stood attached into a scorched black socket. On Tulio's fridge door stood a freshly drawn insignia, 4 hooked blue claws, joined along their curved tops by a thick black horizontal line. This is, Felipe began, at a loss for what to dub this scene. He glanced around, spotted Tulio's phone on the counter near the sink. Grab his phone, wipe your prints off anything you guys touched. We're just going to leave him like this? Marco asked. Yo, we ain't got no choice. Someone else in the building's probably already called in the cops, so we should get out of here now, Felipe replied, already turning around to flee Tulio's apartment. He was able to keep the contents of his stomach in place until he got back into the building's parking lot, at which point he availed himself of nature's impulses. When he had control of himself again, he climbed up into the passenger seat of Marco's truck and nodded to him. Come on, man, let's head back to the shop. When they pulled up alongside the Explorer that had carried their subordinates in front of the roll door of the shop, Felipe felt his chest tighten. The claw insignia blazed in bright relief against the white panels of the garage door. Motherfucker, the dealer growled, pulling the gun from his waistband and popping out of the truck. Come on, yelled at the explorer, his men looking stern but ready as they came out armed and scanning the area. Marco's truck abruptly backed up and whipped around, peeling away. Yo, what the fuck? Felipe yelled after his cowardly lieutenant. He brought his gun up to fire a round at the turncoat, but a moment later he needn't have bothered. Two oversized, midnight black SUVs turned rapidly onto the narrow access road's end, and Marco's truck skidded to a halt some 30 yards away, halfway between their obvious antagonists and Felipe and his crew. Felipe stepped backward and banged on the roll-up door, which creaked open as the black SUVs revved their engines in challenge. 15 men now stood to either side of Felipe, a few of them with Tech-9 submachine guns held ready. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, the dealer said, sniffling and thumbing his nose. Wait until they get closer, then light 'em up. A smattering of appreciative and eager murmurs came from his crew, further bolstering Felipe's confidence. Marco's taillights flickered, and as soon as his truck started to back up, a loud hydraulic pop rent the air, along with rapid metal clacking and shattering glass. One of the black SUVs had fired some kind of grapnel on a chain into the front of Marco's truck, but the grapnel hadn't hit the truck's front end. It had slammed through the front windshield, smashing Marco's head, which it ripped ragged off of his body, out the back window. Nobody moved. For what felt like a small eternity, Felipe didn't even draw a breath. As abruptly as his lieutenant had been decapitated, the SUV with the grapnel reversed, whipsawing sideways to thrash the truck aside like so much detritus. The moment it was out of the way, the chain detached, and the SUVs came charging toward the garage. The crew regained their senses, opening fire on the encroaching vehicles. Felipe darted back behind the firing line, teeth gritted as the vehicles screeched to a stop merely 10 feet from his men. Armored, thought Felipe, watching the bullets barely dent the SUVs. Who the fuck are these guys? The driver's side door of each SUV opened, and each driver came out into full view, their auras holding the crew captive for a moment. The man on the left stood perhaps 6 feet tall, a bald-headed old wizard of a thing with a long, Rasputin-like black beard, his head oddly pill-like in shape, as he smiled with jagged teeth at them. He wore a long, dark blue cloak of some sort, covered in cabalistic sigils, and long, sharp chains glittered down from his wrists and ankles. From the vehicle on the right stepped what looked mostly like a man in a bespoke burgundy three-piece suit with glossy shined wingtip shoes. Mostly applied here, though, as the second driver's head was a blackened skull wreathed in flames, and burning skeletal hands peeked out of his sleeves. Throw down your weapons, and you may leave with your lives, intoned the bearded, cloaked one, the same voice that had taunted Felipe over the phone. Keep your weapons held, and you will likely die. Jago, a demonstration, if you please, the baldy rasped. The flame-headed apparition flung one hand skyward, hurling a coruscating ball of fire upward. We are only interested in taking in Mr. Felipe Alvarez. The rest of you are expendable. As the older man smiled broadly once more, though, the crew opened fire. Chains whipped and curved, and a barrier of flames rose up, deflecting the assault. Felipe started to turn toward the garage's interior, catching from the corner of his eyes the sight of the SUV's rear doors opening. What poured from the vehicles could only be summarized thusly: a swarm of nightmares. Felipe pelted inside, past the tables laden with product, scales, and packaging, up into the office. There was a secondary door within, attached to the abandoned gas station. If he could kick it in, be able to get himself away, and if that didn't work, he could shoot out the rusted lock. He might have gotten out, but for the macabre human instinct drawing his eyes to the monitors on the table. There he watched as wolf-like monstrosities with eagle heads ripped his people open one by one. Another man howled as a muscle-bound, blue-skinned humanoid with a shark's head gashed into him, biting with its hands like oversized garden shears, pausing to snatch bits and pieces clipped and thrown bloody into the air, snatching them up like eager little snacks. To his right, Felipe suddenly heard a swarming, buzzing sound and found himself staring at a cloud of fat black flies, which flew at him abruptly, buzzing like a revving chainsaw. Moments later, all was darkness and warmth, and the drug dealer fell into the unthinking black of dreamless sleep. Consciousness did not return in dribs and drabs, as normally it might. Thanks to the stinging slap of an open hand on his cheek, Felipe awoke with a snort and a lurch, which brought an uncomfortable pressure across his chest, waist, wrists, and ankles. His eyes flashed open. Thanks to his colorful young adulthood, he recognized most of the elements of the room that he was seated in. He was propped upright in an enclosed black bench table in a courtroom, the judge's elevated platform some 12 or so feet away, an empty jury box to his right. But this was where the familiar ceased and the bizarre began. Tilting his head down, Felipe found a dense chain lashed about his chest, waist, and ankles. Two more were wrapped around his wrists, the links vanishing through holes cut into the table or bench at which he had been seated. His clothes hadn't been changed, and he could smell his own sweat and piss. How long he'd been unconscious, he couldn't say. The elevated area, unoccupied at the moment, drew his eye once more. The judge's seat didn't appear to be made of wood, but rather seemed to be the rotting head of some cartoonishly enormous ursine creature, a grizzly or brown bear, all twisted out of standard true deviation, its jaw propped open on two shimmering glass spears. A loud bang behind him made Felipe jump as much as he could and look back over his shoulder. He swallowed hard, watching as a fox-headed man, dressed in a mix of jester's motley and a sleeveless police vest, came cartwheeling down the central aisle between the empty gallery seats, its upper snout lip torn and bloody, as if chewed apart by the beast itself. Its belled tri-prong hat jangled and jingled loudly as it tumbled by, executing a high backflip before the judge's platform and landing perfectly with a flourish. Manic applause filled the room from, it seemed, nowhere. Felipe looked to his right, spotting a half-hidden door pull open, letting a clutch of pale, waxy-skinned people shuffling like zombies into the jury box. As they were slowly lowering themselves into their 12 seats, the fox things spoke in a voice reminiscent of Gilbert Gottfried. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Quoth." To the left of the raised judge's seat, a thick black door creaked open. From beyond the threshold strode a tall, angular figure, a raven-headed man in a black and white checkerboard suit, a salmon-pink button shirt and black tie. Needle-like teeth flashed in its beak, its two human eyes wild, wide, and bloodshot as it walked jauntily toward the judge's seat, waving like a game show host to the jury. In its left hand, it held a slim silver microphone, feathers poking out of its sleeve, and Felipe saw that its feet were bare raven's claws, sharp talons gouging the floor as it walked. "Oh, thank you, thank you. You're a beautiful crowd," the thing called Quoth said, his voice tinged with a pruny bit of English lilt to its otherwise hoary growl. Up unseen steps it ascended, standing now at the judge's seat. A change of attire is in order here," it mused aloud, looking down at itself. It snapped the fingers on its free midnight black hand, and as Felipe blinked, Quoth's garb flashed with a sparkling shadow, replaced by a judge's robes. An oversized white powdered wig now covered its head, and its beak curled in a toothless smirk of consideration. "Ah, much better," it said evenly. It twirled its left wrist, and the microphone let out a cartoon as it changed into a novelty toy gavel. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you may be seated," Quoth said, banging the gavel, which let out a playful squeak. As the ghouls of the jury sat, Felipe looked to the left, spotting the bald-headed wizard guy at the prosecution's table, a weathered old briefcase open by his left elbow. On the other side of Felipe, a chair dragged back, and he turned his head to see yet another ghoulish creature, this one dressed in an ill-fitted gray suit, looking mostly human, and also looking somehow damp. The man looked down at him, and Felipe dry-heaved. This ghoul's right eye was a pulverized tunnel entry through his head, writhing with maggots. Standing right next to the dealer, this ghoul must have been, what, his attorney in this otherworldly courtroom? "Whom addresses this great court today, gentlemen?" Quoth asked, twirling his toy gavel nimbly. "I am the stranger named Merrick, he of the chains, on behalf of the persecution, O honorable Lord Quoth," said the cloaked wizard. "Take your path for the indefensible, Your Honor," grumbled the ghoul beside Felipe, his voice thick, wet, and phlegmy. "Yo, what the fuck is all this?" Felipe finally snapped, his self-control teetering on the verge of oblivion. He tried to raise his hands over his head, but found that he couldn't get them above his shoulders. "This, Mr. Alvarez," Merrick rumbled, striding out into the space between defendant and judge. "This is your trial. Here your crimes against Amelia shall be exposed, and you shall be judged by a jury of your peers," he said with a jagged smile, indicating the revenants in the jury box. "Yo, those zombies ain't my peers, man," Felipe replied. "It's a rather subjective term, Mr. Alvarez," Quoth remarked with a snicker. "I am the beholder and all of that." The raven thing reached up to its own head, twisted it violently around in a full circle, and yanked it free of a neck now sporting shining metal threads, like a toy or robot. Quoth chucked his head toward Felipe, the wig falling away as the head landed with a thud right in front of the dealer. "Like this one," the detached head squawked, the beak hinging open wide, revealing a grapefruit-sized feline eyeball staring right up at him. The stench of the head, a mix of cinnamon and rancid meat, made Felipe heave, and when he opened his eyes after failing to vomit to the side, the creature's head was back on Quoth's shoulders, complete with powdered wig. It was all too much. Felipe felt the laughter bubbling up from somewhere deep in his guts, threatening to burst forth in a fit of delirium. But it quieted, remaining just out of sight for the time being. "Are we prepared to proceed, then?" Quoth asked. "We are, Your Honor," the stranger named Merrick replied. I hereby present Exhibit A, the jury itself. Ladies and gentlemen, you're all dead because of the narcotics that the defendant brought to Amelia City. Mr. Hatch, you were killed by one of Mr. Alvarez's henchmen when, as a district attorney, you sought to have him tried for the distribution of narcotics. That's true enough, Hatch said with a shrug. Can we just declare this piece of shit guilty and move to sentencing, Your Honor? Felipe's inner dam broke, and he started laughing. The absurdity of his situation falling on him like an elephant nudged out of a tree onto a 6-year-old. Capital idea, gentlemen, Quoth yipped gleefully. He hopped up onto his bench, the robes and gavel replaced by his original suit and microphone. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, come on down, he called into the mic as he pointed one glinting claw at Felipe Alvarez. Come on down and claim your pound of flesh. When the jury of ghouls began their shuffle toward the bound drug dealer, he had been laughing madly. The laughter blended with shrieks of agony as claws and rotting teeth tore into him. By the end, there were only wet, wordless whimperings. Barely clinging to life, the ravaged remains peered with one remaining eye up at Quoth, making one final gurgling noise before Hatch scooped out the last of Felipe's throat. The sound sounded almost like, why? Because, Mr. Alvarez, and dear listeners of this presentation, this is Amelia. If anyone's going to lay waste to its human populace, it will be me and mine. Not some drug-slinging illegal from Venezuela. Think on this. Court is adjourned. Thus concludes Peers is a subjective term. Amelia City story, written and presented by yours truly. Got a few more minutes left on this break. I'll have smoke. Then I'll head on in. Just long enough to get through break time, story time. One of my shorter efforts of recent, but still, I did enjoy writing this tale. Thank you, Astro Sweat. I am glad that you were entertained. I'm glad you liked it. And if you are interested, Astro Sweat, there's quite a lot of Amelia City material out there that I've been working up and writing over the years. The very first collection of Amelia City short stories that I published was Roads Through Amelia. And I think, if I remember correctly, I first published that anthology back in it was either 2009 or 2010. There are two anthologies collected and actually published in print format out there on the market. The first one was Roads Through Amelia, and the second one is entitled In Amelia We Do Not Trust. And I've got several, probably close to 15 or 16 other Amelia City short stories that have not yet been all gathered up into a singular collection. A handful I have written and originally published through my Substack. They're not published in any other format except for on the Storyteller's Corner Substack. And that's where they currently reside. But Amelia City is my horror playground, and this being October, being the spooky season, brought to us thanks to the Celtic peoples. Thank you, Samhain, also known sometimes as Samhain, although it is pronounced Samhain. I'm enough of an etymologist and a mythologist and a dork to know that, and also enough of an enthusiast of all things horror to want to make sure that the record is straight on that one. No, it's all right, Sweat. I am glad that you enjoyed it. Um, like I say, it's one of my shorter, more recent Amelia City stories. Um, I know that there's only one or two of the Amelia City tales that I've written in the last 4 or 5 years that are short enough that I'd be able to present them in one sitting during the break time story time session. The rest of them tend to be around 7,000 words each, which would take about an hour to do an audio presentation of, to do a live reading of. And I only get 30 to 40 minutes on my break times to do whatever it is I'm going to do, eat lunch or read, play a video game, or as I've been doing for about 3 weeks or so, roughly, going on and doing break time, story time. But I'm sure I can go through and find another one. I may just do one horror story per week until Halloween so that I stay in the theme, but I might go back to the presentation reading from A Midwestern Yankee in King Open's Court tomorrow. I'm not sure right now. Tomorrow being Sunday, it's my Friday. It's the last day of my work week. I may just come on and banter. It may not even be a story time per se. I'm not sure. Kind of flying by the seat of my pants here. Okay. Just making sure I'm not getting a call because I've only got like 3 or 4 more minutes before I got to get back inside to work. But anyway, yes. And if you, Astro Sweat, if you've been here or if you've listened to, I think it was a couple of episodes ago, Quoth appears in Cappy's story. Of course, Astro Sweat. You say thanks for this. I say thank you for opting to spend the time here with this particular oddball. I appreciate that you spent some time here when there are many other, countless other options on YouTube or Rumble of streamers and presenters, commentators, many of whom are talking about, current events, news of the day, things that are more impactful to people's immediate day-to-day lives. I have plenty of thoughts on these things, but that's not what I'm known for, nor is it what I do. I'm a storyteller. I just enjoy telling stories. So that's what I do. Do you have any questions for me before I get going to Astro Sweat or anyone else that may be watching / listening right now? That's fun. Larry Niven. Niven, it was, let me tell you, Niven was a damned talented storyteller. Um, he's Ringworld, right? He was the author of Ringworld, if I remember correctly, which I have at home and I haven't reread in some time. Folks' banquets clattering around. Yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I have not done a read. I haven't actually. If I think about it, I've only read Ringworld once. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Ringworld one of the influences for the design or concept of the Halo ring in that video game series. Or it may have been an inspiration element for the Citadel in the Mass Effect games. I can't remember. I do know that Niven's Ringworld was referenced as a point of inspiration for the design of either the Halo station or the Citadel station. I can't remember which. But I always appreciate when a piece of genre fiction or genre literature is used as a reference point, something to latch onto in other media, especially in games. Just gives me a little chuckle, like, haha, nice. That's awesome. I like that because it's crossing boundaries from one type of nerddom into another, and I always appreciate that. It's all right if you don't know offhand. I'll have to look it up later when I have the opportunity. Okay, hold up. Go ahead. Acknowledged. I will check that on my next route. I'm gonna have to get back in here. Yeah, see, damn it. I don't remember the puppeteer. I gotta reread that shit, man. I have so much stuff to read, and my TBR is getting longer all the damn time. My to be read list, but I will pack it in there because, unlike so many of the other titles on my to be read list, many of which are on my Kindle and waiting to read digitally, I have a physical copy of Niven's Ringworld at home. I just need to actually grab it off the shelf and remember to throw it in my bag. But anyhow, that's going to do it for me. Thank you for tuning in, and Astro Sweat, thank you for your commentary and for your question. Yeah, again, that's going to be all for me for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Yeah, I'm going to get to work. Cheers, folks.